Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in again. Today's episode is a good one because it's the next installment of our Build to Catch series where I take one of my favorite MHX blanks, I build it, and then I'll take it out on the water and show you what techniques I like to use it for. This is one of my favorite spinning rods that I have. It's the SJ9000, so we've got a brand new blank here in the bag, and we're going to turn it into another one of these beautiful spinning rods that I love to use. As you can see, it's the MHX Sj9000, and this rod is a pretty specialized blank because it's a 7.5 foot medium light action rod that is capable of handling baits from 1/16 of an ounce. Yes, 1/16 of an ounce up to 3/8 ounce. So it's a rod that really is built for fishing smaller finesse techniques. I absolutely love this for fishing hair jigs. That's one of my main reasons I build this rod. But it also works great for like small swim baits. If you were to take one of my guppy heads and say an 1/8 ounce guppy head and pair it up with a 2.8 swim bait, it's great for that because you can make super long casts and you can just control fish with such a long rod. I mean, I'm catching lots of 4 to 6 pound smallmouth on this blank, and it handles them so well. You can play the fish out better than most other rods that are on the market. The other technique that I really like this for is spy baiting. So if you like fishing a spy bait and you want to be able to cast the spy bait a mile, you can do that on this. And because of the fact that you're throwing a bait with open exposed hooks, you don't have to worry about having a rod that's got a big backbone to drive the hooks home. So small swim baits, hair jigs, really any technique where you might want to throw a really light bait, this is a perfect rod for you because that 7.5 foot length and the light action allows you to load that rod up on the cast and create like a whip action and really slingshot your bait forward. You will get much better distance by using a rod like this than going with something that's a little bit heavier powered. I can tell you firsthand in my experience, this has taken my hair jig fishing to the next level because I'm able to cast the hair jig, I would estimate, at least 50% further than other rods I could find that were on the market. So having the ability to build this rod myself is really something that's given me a huge advantage anytime I'm fishing finesse tactics in really clear water where you need to make that long cast. So we're going to get down to building this. I'm going to walk you through how to build the reel seat on this. I know the other rods we've built so far in the series have been casting rods, which are a little bit more simplified. In this case, when you're talking about a reel seat for a spinning rod, we got to arbor up underneath the reel seat so that we can get the reel seat to fit snug. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And then we're going to head out to Sturgeon Bay and hopefully catch some smallmouth. It's a little bit early still. I've heard through the grapevine that they're not fully up like I wanted them to be, but we're way behind here. And I still think we can catch a few, but it may not be as good as I was hoping. So let's get down to building one of these, and then we'll head out on the water. Some people would say that building a spinning rod is a little bit more difficult than building a bait caster, but it's really not. There's a couple of things that I actually prefer about building a spinning rod. So in this case, I've got my butt grip mounted on, and I've got a lower nubbin mounted onto the rod already. What you need to do then at that point is get your reel seat mounted onto your rod. Now there's a lot of different types of reel seats. The one that I'm using today has an exposed open grip so that I can have direct contact onto the blank, giving me a little bit more sensitivity. The thing with reel seats built for spinning rods is they generally come as like one size fits all. Versus a reel seat for a bait caster, you have to have the specific size, and that reel seat would slide right down to the point where it's snug on a bait casting rod. On a spinning rod, it's a little bit different. So if I were to take my reel seat, slide it down the blank, it would be loose. Like there'd be wiggle room because it doesn't fit snug. So what you have to do is you have to arbor up the blank of the rod. So in this case, I've added some tape here, some masking tape, and then that's what we're going to glue over. The other thing that you need to do though, because this is an exposed blank reel seat is I need to add an insert into that. So the insert will fit snug inside of the reel seat, and then at that point, that's what will give the, that's what will create the bind between the reel seat and the blank itself. So I'm gonna have to glue this into the reel seat, the insert, and then, so I'll slide that down. Let me get that out and I'll just show you. So then I'll slide that down because this will be the part that will be making a connection on the rod, and it'll fit snug onto the blank of the rod. So what I got to do is add one more piece of, or one more arbor. So I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to put it at the top end of where the top of the reel seat would be. So I've already measured all of this up. I've got my spine identified, and at this point I'm just building up that arbor to give the reel seat something to sit to. It also will give something that the glue can hold on to adhere the reel seat onto the blank. So I've got that on, and then at this point, just to make sure it fits good, I just want everything to fit pretty snug down to the end of the rod, just like that. And at that point, like, the reel seat will be glued onto that. So I'll just show you, slide it all down. And then I'll take my last nubbin, which is the top part that I've already reamed out to fit, and then that'll slide down and fit snug in the top. So that'll be the whole hand, or the reel seat portion of the rod. It'll all be good. I just need to take my my glue and glue it all into place at this point. But it's really not that difficult. And the one thing that I really like about spinning reel seats is you don't have to have the exact size. You can make them all fit. If you're using baitcaster, there's a lot of times where, you know, you think you know what the right size reel seat is, you go to try to use it and it's not the right one, and then you need to order either a size bigger or a size smaller, and it just leads to having more parts and needing to be more precise. With the spinning reel seat, it's more like one size fits all, and you just then need to you know, arbor it up and get it to fit snug. So it's kind of nice from that standpoint. It is a little bit more time intensive, but it's really still not difficult. It may add an extra 5 or 10 minutes. It's not a big deal. So I'm gonna get this all glued into place, and then I'll see you out on the water. We're heading out to Sturgeon Bay tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. First time all year I've been out there. One of my favorite places to fish. So I'm gonna get to it. Whoa! On the hair. Not a giant, not a bad one. Close to, probably close to a 4-pounder. Oh. Nice one on the hair. I gotta tell you, SJ9000 is just the perfect hair jig rod. It's a 1/16 of an ounce, handles big smallmouth like that. Just a beauty. Fat chunky fish. Gonna let her go. First of many, hopefully. All right. Yeah, so this rod, I've actually modeled this right after the G Loomis NRX 901, I believe is the model number, but that's considered the staple of hair jig rods. It's pretty much the exact same blank, but that rod costs 600 bucks. You can build this MHX Sj9000, which is the exact same rod pretty much in terms of specifications. It's a 7.5 foot medium light, and it's rated for a 1/16 ounce bait up to, this one's up to 3/8 ounce. But it handles these light baits so well because you can cast them just a mile because it's a long whippy rod. And that's really what you're after with this, and that's what guys want with the hair jig rods. But there's very few manufacturers of a rod that works for the hair jig. And that's why this rod is so great. You know, I've actually modeled it color-wise and everything after it just so I know real quick what rod it is. But if you ask any of the major hair jig fishermen from the North Country, that's kind of the rod that is the cream of the crop when it comes to hair jigs. But I'm here to tell you, you can build the exact same rod for under 200 bucks, and that rod will cost you 600 and something, I think. So if you're looking to get into the hair jig game, you definitely need to build yourself an MHX Sj9000. Let's catch another one. The key to this hair jig is you throw it out and you just have a nice steady retrieve. You don't work it. There's one right there. That's a pike. You don't work it, you just throw it straight out and give it a nice steady retrieve. The key is you want to keep it right off the bottom. If you can keep it off the bottom, you're in a good spot. If you're hitting the bottom, you're probably getting some moss and it's just going to get you all over the place. It's not what you're after. So you kind of want to keep it like in that bottom 2 feet right off the bottom. But it's a really good bait to be throwing for these shallow flats. The other species that truly loves a black hair jig are northern. I don't know why, but they love it as well. And you can see, you know, this rod, it handles big fish no problem. But the whole key with the hair jig is to be able to cast it a long distance. I'm positioning myself with the wind right now so I can make longer casts. But really, very, very few rods are even on the market that are capable of casting this out there. So I need to check that line to make sure that guy didn't nick me, because that's what they like to do. Feels good. I should retie anyways, but I'm too lazy. I want to get back out there. Is not a big one, not a bad one. On the hair. Nice chunky one. So what we're fishing here is about a 10-foot flat, and it's a rock, sand, gravel transitions all over the place. There's a couple of isolated boulders, and the fish just keep sliding up and around. Water is about 47 degrees, so it's still cool. Yeah, they'll probably start spawning in the next couple of weeks, but right now they're just starting to feed. They're actually starting to come in off of the main Green Bay portion. They're not up nearly as good as I was expecting, but you definitely can still catch some fish. It's just not like the 200 fish day type fishing day. but it's going to happen here in the next couple of days. But it's really key to find these transition zones, because that's what the fish are running. They move in and they follow these rock edges, and that's all we're fishing. Another one, not a big one, but we'll take them, they're all fun. Oh, another 2-pounder. It's hard to beat a good marabou bite when you got the right rod to get you the distance to catch nice smallmouth. So there's a couple of keys to casting this bait. When you go to make a cast, this is one of the few baits where I feel like you really want to snap your wrist at the end. You almost want to slingshot the bait further out. So what you want to do is when you make a cast, you actually want to make sure that you've got a little bit of line out, and at the same time you've got a fully loaded marabou jig with water. Meaning, you know, you go to make a cast, don't let it just hang here and then make a cast. I like to have, you know, probably 6 feet of line out, 5 feet, make sure my bait's wet, and you create a good snap, and you actually create that slingshot with your bait, and you need that water to create some mass. You know, you can put a little piece of plastic on the shank of the hook to give you a little bit of weight, but really it just comes down to when you cast, you got to create that snap, because that snap is where you get your distance. And that's one of the reasons you want a long rod that's a light action, because you can create a snap with your rod. Your rod loads up so much better than if you were using, say, a medium action rod. So this whole technique of throwing a hair jig is really based on the rod. Like I said, if you're not throwing the right rod, this is a technique that you probably are not having a lot of success using. You've probably been pretty frustrated with it. I mean, it's windy out here today, and I'm still having a ball catching fish. I mean, it's just one of those things that you gotta be willing to deal with. You gotta figure out the technique, because there are a lot of little nuances to it that really do make a difference. Let's see if we can get one more before I gotta go in for dinner. I know they're here. A couple other things I want to point out too is this rod isn't just a hair jig rod. I like to throw small swim baits on it, little 1/8 ounce swim baits. I like to throw spy baits on it. Anything where you're just, you've got an exposed hook. That's the one thing. I don't like to throw it for like weedless baits where I've got the hook buried in a bait, because it is a whippy rod and you don't get nearly as good a hook set with something like that. So I like to throw exposed baits on it where I'm looking to make long casts and just kind of slow move. It's got such a soft tip that the fish just suck in the bait. So like spy baits, small swim baits like my guppy head on a little 1/8 ounce with a 2.8 or 3.3 swim bait are fantastic. Just a great all-around finesse rod, especially for fighting big smallmouth. It's such a good rod for that. I've caught a lot of really big bags of fish on these rods, and I think it would be hard to go to something else nowadays. Gosh, I love that bite. Ooh, that's a nice one. He's got that thing so far down there. He's blinding one eye. Look at that hair jig, just gone. It's so key to have the right rod for this, because if you don't, you're just not gonna like this technique. Golly, come on, fish. It's one of those things that we're gonna get this out. It's one of those things that if you don't have the right rod, you're gonna end up just really disliking this technique. That's all I can say. And there's so few rods on the market that you're just better off making one. I mean, that's how it's gonna be. That's my last cast, guys. I gotta go meet the family for dinner. Door County is one of our favorite places to come. The Sturgeon Bay area, we come multiple times a year. And I need to get back and meet them for dinner. As much as I would love to stay out, it's time for me to go. But I think you can see the advantages to building yourself an SJ9000 rod. I mean, it is just a fantastic finesse rod for getting light baits a long distance from the boat. Really good for catching these big smallmouth. I mean, we've had several fish in the 3 to 4 pound range in the short amount of time we've been out today, and I cannot complain. So if you're in the market for one, think about building it, because you can build a high-end rod for a lot cheaper than you can buy it in the store. All the dimensions I've put in the video, I'll put them in the description of the video as well. Also, the component list was in the video earlier in the video, but I also put that in the description so you can order the exact parts that I use on the SJ9000s that I build, so you can build yourself the exact rod that you see here today, down to the thread color if you'd like. So guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you guys, and I gotta get going for dinner. I would love to stay out all night, but I gotta go. So if you enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, another video coming out tomorrow.